Hey guys, it's Jessica.
And this is Kendra, and you're listening to Lucid Lab.
Hi, Sapphira. It's a Friday.
Yeah, we're recording on an afternoon after work.
After work.
I broke open a bottle of wine, which I haven't been doing lately because when we're recording at 9 o'clock in the morning, it just doesn't seem appropriate.
And then I get to have a lovely headache.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like I have them all the time, but it's been a really hard week of work. It just frustrates me that all of my time goes to work, and then the time that's supposed to be mine, I don't feel well.
Well, I'm glad it's the weekend at least, although we are in the heat dome, I think is what they're calling it.
Yeah, it's
which
hot.
Might be why you have a headache. It's like 95 degrees outside, which makes me not want to do much. So I've been inside my house editing all day.
Yeah.
In between work meetings because I don't want to leave my AC.
It's so true. It's hard out there.
Mm-hmm.
You can't breathe, really.
Yeah, I usually go for walks during the day and I can't in this heat.
Nope.
I'm not built for it anymore. I was when I lived in Texas.
We'll be the grandmas that moved to Alaska instead
right?
of Phoenix.
By the time we're grandmas with climate change and all of that, Alaska will be like Colorado.
Maybe. And then the hot places will be cold. So I don't know. Let's just hold out.
So I went to my first concert of the season. I made it out to Red Rocks last week.
Oh, that's cool.
It was really cool. And it was not 95 degrees. It was actually perfect weather. And we got a little bit of rain, but not a lot because it can be a crapshoot. Sometimes you can get hailed on, you can get lightning, you can get pouring rain. So we were praying to the weather gods that day not to ruin our time. And we just got a little bit of sprinkles. And
that's nice.
Yeah, it was great. We went and saw Lord Huron. They have a new album coming out and he played 2 new songs from that album.
Oh.
So now I'm eagerly anticipating. That's all I've been up to other than work.
Yeah. I had a surprise visit from my niece yesterday and it was really
That's
good
cool.
to see her. I always wanted to get to that point where my nieces and nephews were old enough to come see me. It was a moment. She's 20 and I got to see her and she listens and I don't know if she wants me to say her name, but hi, Haley. I love you. Thanks for visiting.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you. So what are we doing today?
So we're going to a paranormal place today, and we're going to be talking about the Hoia Baciu Forest.
I don't know if I've heard anything about this forest. It's like kind of sticking out in my mind, but I don't know. Where is it located?
It's in Romania.
Okay.
So it's actually in Transylvania.
Oh, okay.
Part of Romania. And when I was looking at all of this, if you look at the history, Transylvania used to be its own country.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. Of course, I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah. We're traveling to the part of the world that has long intrigued the paranormal, history, and vampire fans for ages.
I talked about it a little bit in the vampire episode.
You did. And the capital city of Transylvania is called Cluj-Napoca.
Ooh.
And just outside of this bustling city, it's the 3rd largest in the country of Romania, lies the Hoia Baciu Forest. And this is a forest that is sometimes referred to as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania and sometimes the Bermuda Triangle of Eastern Europe.
So, of course, there's going to be vampires and a bunch of other things, I think.
Yeah, there's not really vampires in this story, surprisingly.
Oh.
But we'll talk a little bit about vampires because we can't not talk about them when you're in Transylvania.
Exactly.
The Hoia Baciu Forest is sometimes referred to as just Hoia Forest, so you might hear me shorten it throughout this. I might get tired of saying Hoia Baciu.
Okay.
It is one of the most famous locations in Romania. Scientists and anywhere from amateur paranormal investigators all the way up to the most well-known have visited this location to analyze what's going on with some of the phenomena that we see coming out of the forest.
Okay.
The area itself became really famous worldwide in 1968. We'll talk about why here in a minute. Don't want to spoil everything, but locals have known about the Hoia Forest since ancient times, and they've seen it as a bad place where things happen beyond the understanding of humans. Even today, many locals will not venture into the Hoia Forest.
Is it like close to the city?
Yes, it's about a 20-minute drive from the city. So very easy to get to. Like if you visit Cluj-Napoca, you can even get a taxi to take you out there.
Okay.
ancient locals and those that live here today know that once you adventure into the Hoia Baciu Forest, you should be ready for anything.
Like the Yuri?
Kind of. It's very similar. We'll talk about the Aokigahara forest here in a minute as well. Since ancient villagers made their first steps into the forest, they found themselves assaulted by unexplained nausea, anxiety, headaches, and even some coming out with burns on their skin. People became afraid of entering this place. For the people living near the Hoia Forest, the dark legends and chilling accounts are far more than just folklore. Many locals firmly believe that the forest is inhabited by malevolent spirits, demonic entities, and even extraterrestrial beings who hide among the twisted branches of the centuries-old trees.
So that's crazy trees.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, and there's some really cool pictures that I will share.
Okay.
The forest has also gained a reputation not only for being haunted or the site of UFO activity, but also a place where cultists can open portals to other dimensions.
Uh-oh.
So it has everything. Like, we're going to go all over the place with the stories that are coming out of the Hoia Forest.
Yeah.
To me, the stories coming from Hoia Baciu Forest are reminiscent of America's Bridgewater Triangle. And that's another place that Jessica has in the calendar to cover in the future.
I do.
But before we explore more in the Hoia Forest, I want to talk about the Transylvania region as a whole and what might be contributing to what we're seeing in this forest.
Okay.
The region of Transylvania in central Romania is an area steeped in history. It became internationally renowned as a consequence of the 1897 novel Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was loosely based on the bloodthirsty exploits of ruler Vlad Dracula and his uncompromising methods for dealing with his enemies and criminals alike.
Yep. Staking them.
Despite his brutal reputation, Vlad is actually something of a national hero in Romania due to his fight for independence. And much of his ferocious nature was in large part considered to be seen as good because it was on behalf of the national people's interests.
Right.
Bram Stoker based his writing on the supposedly blood-sucking vampires that cropped up in Romanian folklore and merely used the Dracula name, so synonymous with the area's history. Jessica discussed a lot of details around Vlad the Impaler and the origins of vampires. So if you want to hear more, check out her episode. It's from October of 2023.
Oh, yeah. It was a Halloween
Yes.
episode. That's right.
And it's a good one. So go check it out. I don't want to go into more about it because I would just be repeating what we've already talked about.
Yep.
Many people travel to Transylvania for Dracula tourism. While they may be drawn there to explore the sites associated with this famous Vlad the Vampire, many are unaware that there's a spot that may be far spookier than the others, and that's the Hoia Baciu Forest. As a quick side note, since we don't really end up in Romania too much with our episodes, I did want to highlight some of the sites that you can see if you go to Transylvania on this Dracula tour. But while you're there, I think you should also maybe check out the Hoia Forest. You may not want to after I tell you all that's there. But the places that are supposedly connected to Vlad the Impaler and haunted are as follows.
I think I would definitely go.
I think Romania looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
And looking at this forest, it's really pretty. Land. There's all the mountains. The first place I'm going to talk about right now is Bran Castle, and it's set up on a hill and is kind of what you would see if you watched the movie Dracula from the 1990s.
Oh, yeah.
It was the inspiration.
Nice.
It is said to be haunted by the spirits of those criminals who were killed by Vlad the Impaler.
I mean, that's a lot of death.
He killed a lot.
And in brutal, brutal ways.
Yes.
I can definitely understand why it would be haunted.
As I already said, the castle sits up on the hill, and it's very similar to how Bram Stoker described Dracula's castle. So it's a big draw. It's probably the number one draw to that area.
A lot of people probably go there thinking that's exactly what it is.
Or they think he was actually a vampire.
Like very naive Americans.
True.
Like I was watching this video the other day and this girl was so confused. She was like traveling around the world and it was so astonishing to her that in another country they didn't celebrate the 4th of July.
Are you kidding me?
And then she's like, well, this is just so weird. Like she posted a video about it. And then she's like, I have to ask more people. So she asked more people and they're like, no. And she's
we don't
like,
give a shit.
Why are people not celebrating the 4th of July? I'm like, because that is an American holiday. And I don't care what age you are. I'm like, most people should know that
different countries have different
that's
celebrations.
An American holiday.
And holidays, yeah.
So I'm just laughing at Americans right now. That's all.
We are not taught things in our schools, so
Apparently not even a major holiday is explained.
we're just taught to be so US centric, I think.
It's just all about
Us.
yeah. And like it's about fireworks and partying. It's not about actually what happened. So that's why I think kids are removed from the history of it.
They're like, I just want to light some sparklers and see some fireworks tonight.
Yeah. Anywho.
So another place that you can visit along the Dracula tour is the Poenari Fortress. This was used by Vlad the Impaler on many occasions for his campaigns. It is not him that haunts this site. It's actually his wife.
Ooh.
It's believed that his wife had to choose between suicide or being captured by the Turks. So she decided to jump from the high cliff that this castle sits on to end her life.
Oh, that's interesting.
Very sad story.
Yeah.
People have claimed to see orbs of light at night where she supposedly took her life.
Wow.
This is another interesting one to me. It's called the Witch's Pond.
Mm-mm.
And locals believe that witches came to the pond to perform rituals and that this is also the place where Vlad the Impaler was supposedly decapitated.
Oh, okay.
It is said that the magic rituals that are performed in the forest near this pond keeps the mysterious witch's pond alive. Locals say the pond never dries up, but it also never expands, nor does rain or drought affect its shape in any way. And even animals stay away from this pond.
That sounds more like a portal.
I don't know. It looks like a puddle when I saw the
really?
picture of it. It's very small, but there's a lot of lore around it.
Does it have a little fence?
No.
Oh,
You can just go visit it.
creepy.
And the last place I wanted to mention is Corvin Castle. It has some spooky stories attached to it. It's believed that Vlad the Impaler was imprisoned in the castle's dungeon for years. After staying in the dungeon for these many years, Vlad began losing his mind.
Yep.
It is said that his thoughts became darker and his lust for blood increased, which this is part of the lore of why he's seen as a vampire. However, he was not the only one who was held captive in these dungeons. According to legend, there were 3 Turkish men who were captured and asked to dig a well. They were told that once they found water, they would be set free. But all 3 men died in the dungeons, so they didn't follow through.
That'd be quite some work, too. I'm sure they weren't given light.
No. It does sound like they found water because apparently when you visit this castle, you can see something that they supposedly wrote on the walls that said, "You now have water, but you don't have a heart."
Oh, whoa.
So it's believed that maybe not only Vlad would be haunting there, but these 3 Turks.
So they didn't let them go?
No.
That's fucked up.
They just wanted a well and thought if they like dangled the carrot, they would work harder, but pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
So after that little side trip, let's get back to the creepy Hoia Forest. As I mentioned, this forest is located right outside of Cluj-Napoca, which is where you can fly into if you want to explore Hoia Forest or the Dracula sites. It does have an international airport with daily connections from most of the cities in Europe. It's the 3rd largest city in Romania, and it's home to about 330,000 people. It was founded in 1213. So it's been around a while.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yes. It can also be referred to as just Cluj. It has universities. It has a very vibrant nightlife and monuments dating from when they were under Saxon and Hungarian rule. There's a central area called the Union Square, and there's a beautiful Gothic-style church called St. Michael's that was built back in the 15th century.
Okay.
So our air conditioner just kicked on here. And usually we turn that off when we record, but being as hot as it is, we're going to let it go. So if you hear a little hum in the background, it's just keeping me and Jessica from passing out.
Yes. Thank you.
Which is pretty important if we're going to finish this episode. There's also a palace called Bonfi Palace that was built in the Baroque era, and it's supposed to be beautiful and also haunted. Because I think if something's built in the 1200s, it has to be haunted at this point everywhere.
If it's still standing. Yeah.
Other nearby attractions that are interesting and very close to the forest, and this will come back later, so that's why I want to mention it, is there is an archaeological site that was found right outside of Cluj-Napoca. It's called Hoia Baciu, and it dates back to 6500 BC.
Oh, wow.
It has been one of the most important archaeological complexes found in Europe. Transylvania is believed to have been one of the first areas in all of Europe that was settled by people carrying a Neolithic culture or ideology called the New Stone Age.
Mm-hmm.
And it's characterized by the beginning of a settled human lifestyle. So this is when people began to learn how to cultivate plants and domesticate animals so that they weren't relying on just being hunter-gatherers.
Yep.
They're still there today. They're still digging and you can visit it. And it goes right into the Hoia Forest.
Oh, okay.
So the Hoia Forest is known as the creepiest forest in the world. I'm starting to give up on these things. I feel like everything that we research says it's the scariest haunted whatever in the world.
Most haunted thing in America. Most haunted thing in the world.
I'm starting to think you just pay for those titles.
I know, right? Well, it's clicky if you're looking online.
Yeah, it's going to bring in the tourism.
Sure.
But
there just needs to be a level, like fire danger.
Yeah. How creepy. Comparatively.
Right. Doesn't mean it's the creepiest, but if it's in the red, it's up there.
They should say creepiest forest in Romania or something,
yeah.
Bring it down. Saying it's in the whole world. You don't know. You haven't been to everywhere.
Exactly.
There's forests we probably haven't even found yet that are way creepier.
Right. Islands. Ooh, you can't get out of those.
So the Hoia Baciu Forest covers around 750 acres in total, and it is extremely dense. Visitors and locals report a heavy mist that often descends upon the area, in some cases causing complete darkness even in the bright midday sun.
Yeah.
So
that is reminiscent
creepy
of
Aokigahara. Mm-hmm. So here's where the folklore, as some like to say, begins, is how the forest was even named. The legend is that it got its name from a shepherd who was named Baciu. And according to the story, he disappeared into the area along with a flock of 200 sheep. He entered the forest with this flock and was never seen again. His sheep and their remains were never found.
Aliens were wanting to try sheep, or they just took them to repopulate a different planet.
Maybe. They're like, thank you. We needed 200.
Yeah, we needed that many.
This tale is often cited as one of the first mysterious occurrences associated with the forest, and it dates back several centuries. You will find in this story that there's not a lot of detailed historical records, and a lot of these stories are just ones that were passed down orally because this came about in early times.
That's what's hard about some of these really old stories. We're just playing the telephone game, right? Everything we could be telling you right now is a complete fabricated lie. But they're still fun to talk about.
I'm just sharing the information. I'll tell you what I think at the end. I haven't been there, though, so it's really hard to make my judgment.
Yep.
Now, aside from strange events that have occurred here, the forest has very odd vegetation. What stands out first and foremost about the Hoia Forest is the bizarre shape and nature of the trees. They look like they come straight out of a sci-fi movie or some kind of dystopian parallel universe. The trees do not grow straight up. They bend and spiral almost as if they were twisting their limbs to reach out and touch you.
Ooh, sounds creepy.
While they may be strong and sturdy trees, many are crooked and bent at right angles.
I feel like I've seen pictures of this forest now that you're describing it.
You may have. They add to the mystique of the environment. They're a deformed yet equally beautiful vision resembling a scene straight from Sleepy Hollow.
Oh.
Scientists have been out to the forest to examine the tree growth patterns, but they've been unable to figure out why the trees grow in such an erratic fashion. Now, before I go further, because you mentioned you've seen pictures online, and when I started researching this, there were lots of pictures that came up. And if you go searching for the images of the Hoia Baciu Forest, I would say at least 60, maybe up to 80% of them are not even the right place.
Oh, interesting.
So most pictures out on the web show an even more distorted picture of trees growing sideways, and these actually do exist, but they're not in Romania.
Oh.
They're in Poland. And so I want to take a quick side trip again here just to talk about this other place because it's going to come up every time you look up Hoia Forest. I will put it on Instagram so you know what's really Hoia and what's not. And we can kind of learn about this place that's called the Crooked Forest in Poland.
Okay, to the point.
Yes, very blunt. The Crooked Forest is a grove of 400 oddly shaped pine trees located near the town of Gryfino, West Pomerania in Poland. The pine trees were planted around 1930 when its location was still within the German province of Pomerania. From the base, the pine trees grow with a 90-degree sharp bend.
Like right at the base?
Yes.
Wow.
But then they curve back to grow straight up into the sky. So they have a full-on like...
Interesting.
I'm like trying to describe it.
All of them.
Yes. all 400 of them. Despite the unnatural curves bending 3 to 9 feet sideways at their bases, they generally are healthy trees and they grow to be up to 50 feet tall.
Whoa, that's a lot of pressure on that little bend.
Well, I mean, the bend can go up to 9 feet sideways, so I guess
It's still a lot of pressure, though. If you think about, that's not that much, like breaking in the middle if it goes 9 feet sideways.
it's been around since the 1930s, so
Yeah, that's crazy.
we'll see what happens as they get
I'll
older
look at
and
'em.
older. There are many theories on why the trees in Poland grow this way, but there's really no evidence to support any of them. Some hypothesize that a unique gravitational pull in this area is causing the trees to grow curved, but this theory doesn't really hold up based on the scientific principle of gravity, which should pull things downward and not at a curve. So it shouldn't go sideways and then back up.
Yeah,
it should have
and-
kept going down if that's the truth, if it's a gravitational pull.
And then why would they suddenly start to grow up?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Others have thought that perhaps heavy snowfall in the area weighted down the trees when they were baby saplings, and that caused them to grow crookedly at the base.
It's more logical than the other thing.
But the problem is this theory doesn't explain why other groups of pine trees in the near area were not affected.
Something happened to just these trees. And it's, I don't know, maybe it is some kind of supernatural thing.
We're getting to the most widespread and most likely explanation, and that is not something very exciting. It's just that they believe local farmers planted and manipulated the trees when they planted them in 1930. I don't know why they would have.
Yeah.
There's a thought that the trees were grown for a specific reason to make the rims of wooden cartwheels, and having your trees grow that way would have made the grain direction the way that it needed to make the cartwheels more sturdy.
Okay. I do know that people manipulate the way a tree can be grown for specific purposes. So
It's just, I would think it would be hard because it would snap. So I guess
I
if it was
know.
bendy enough.
Well, I don't think that they were trying to leave it to grow as long as it did.
Yes. And that is actually the next thing I was about to say is people have been trying to find the answer to this for a long time. But what happened is during World War II, the town of Grafino was largely abandoned, and the people who were there before the war and probably planted these trees and had the answers
Right. They're
may
gone.
have been killed or
Yeah.
they're gone, and we don't know where to find them. So that's all I want to say about the crooked forest in Poland. I will put a picture of this one. There is nothing paranormal that anyone has reported coming out of the crooked forest, but it is, for whatever reason, people want to embellish how distorted the trees are in the Hoia forest.
Yeah.
They're distorted enough on their own. There's
Yeah.
no reason to use the crooked forest, but I guess it draws people in. It's probably used by tour companies trying to get...
Yeah. Probably.
But can you imagine you fly to Romania to see that?
And you don't see it? Yeah.
Yeah, so
Although I think if you're going to spend that much money, you do look into things a little bit more.
yeah. But I saw it on so many articles.
Yeah.
I just had to bring it up so that you're not duped. So back to the Hoia forest, what is probably the most significant aspect of the landscape, aside from the distorted trees that I already mentioned, is the fact that at its center lies a near perfect circular clearing. Now, this is a patch of land where inexplicably there are no trees or vegetation and nothing grows there or ever has.
I do remember this.
At one point, scientists carried out numerous tests on the soil in search of some sort of chemical composition that might inhibit growth, but nothing was found to be out of the ordinary. In fact, it was deemed to be the exact same soil, no different to the lush and fertile ground elsewhere in the forest.
Interesting.
When you step into this dead zone, you are surrounded by the forest and you feel eerily removed from the rest of the world. Some believe this area holds special energy and is a hub for paranormal activity. I saw it referred to as just the circle in some articles. I also saw one article, I couldn't find it again, that said something about like the devil's circle.
Okay.
So, this clearing is often cited as a hot spot for sightings of ghostly figures, sudden temperature drops, and the malfunctioning of electronic devices.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Yeah. I imagine.
According to the legends out there about the Hoia forest, there are specific areas within where the veil between our world and other dimensions is thinner than others, and many believe the circle is one of those spots.
That would be a pretty creepy circle to be in the middle of.
I wouldn't want to be there looking at it.
Yeah.
Some believe this spot could be a gateway to alternate realities or dimensions. Others believe that the circle was formed by a UFO that landed there at some point.
Well, how big is it?
It's about 2,000 square meters. And for us American folk that don't understand meters, that's about 21,000 square feet. So it's quite large.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty big ship.
True. Yeah, if you think about it that way. That was like a whole population of the alien country coming.
Fleet of ships or just a really, really big one.
I mean, they needed a large ship to take 200 sheep.
It was Noah's Ark. This was a really long time ago, before Christ.
6,500 BC. So let's get into some specific stories coming out of the Hoia Baciu Forest, and then we can discuss possible theories from the scientific side or the paranormal side on what could be happening here. So I want to start with UFOs, because this is really what brought the forest onto the map for the world. The locals always knew something was crazy there, but in the 1950s, it became known as this hotspot for UFOs.
Interesting.
So the first attempts to study Baciu Forest and its oddities were made by the biologist Alexandru Sift. He was attracted to the area based on scary stories that were circulating around about the place. At the time, the forest was considered by some to be cursed or haunted, if not the very house of the devil.
Oh.
So this was in the 1950s and 60s, and he walked through the forest and was just photographing everything that seemed out of the ordinary. This experiment of his resulted in about 60,000 amazing photographs, and in one of those photographs was something that was about to shock the entire world.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
When he got the film developed, Sift observed that he had captured some shapes, lights, and silhouettes imperceptible to the human eye when the photo was taken. These shapes were seen floating between trees and amongst their shadows. He also had an unexplained encounter in the forest, according to his own confession. During an afternoon, July of 1953, Alexandru was in the forest and he noticed a gray object in the shape of the letter V off to the side, about 2 to 3 meters away from him, and it was moving down towards the ground. He saw the strange object land on a bush not very far from him. While he was stunned, he rushed over there anyways to see what it was. He took a stick and he stirred the bush. And
so this is like a teeny baby UFO?
Yeah, like a little baby UFO.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
He said he was amazed that he couldn't find what he just saw land in the bush. It's like it had become invisible. But he said while he was inserting the stick and trying to find that, he noticed that his hand also became invisible all the way up to the elbow.
Oh.
So it was like a cloaking technology that his hand went into. He claims then that a warm breeze suddenly emerged from the bush and it threw him a few steps back.
I'm imagining the little aliens from Men in Black, the one that's in the dog.
Yes. Or did you ever see that movie, Batteries Not Included? It was from my childhood. They were tiny aliens.
Ones?
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember that. And like there's like a hamburger scene
where
they're flipping patties and
they're
stuff.
tiny.
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
I love that movie actually.
That's a good one we should show our kids.
It's a really good movie.
I was just thinking about that.
I've been watching tons of old movies with my daughter recently. We just watched Ernest Goes to School.
Oh, God. I watched all the Ernest ones. Ernest Goes to Camp.
And then I started watching Teen Wolf because you brought it up. I totally forgot that there's some scenes in there that a child should not see.
Yeah, we watched a lot of stuff in the days that we probably wouldn't let our kids watch now.
And we watched Little Monsters, which was a kid's show. It's PG, but one of the very first things in the beginning is him running out of his bedroom to go have a peanut butter and onion sandwich and watch TV when he wasn't supposed to.
Okay.
And the first thing he turns on, it's like this girl. She's wearing almost no clothing, big tatas. And even my daughter was like, whoa, Mom.
That's crazy.
And I was like, we watched some weird stuff back then.
I know. So many sexual undertones. They go over your head when you're a kid, but then when you rewatch it as an adult, you're like, oh, this was programming us.
Today, it would never happen.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, yeah, it says PG. And I watched it when I was 7, but now I'm like, have to sit there with my daughter to make sure things aren't in these shows.
I had the exact same experience showing all of my old shows to my kids and being like, oh God, this is uncomfortable.
I'd like to see that with her, but do you remember anything weird?
I'm sure there's something. So yeah, maybe the Batteries Not Included aliens were visiting the Hoia Forest when Alexandru was there.
Well, now I want to go because they're too cute.
I want to make them my pets.
Yes.
He was thrown back a few steps. His arm had gone invisible and kind of freak you out, right? But he said when he was thrown back, the color came back to his arm and he got the hell out of the forest. But he said once he got home, he began to have really bad headaches, dizziness, and chills.
Ooh.
The day after, he had a high-grade fever, and he said he could not leave bed for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
So I don't know what happened there.
Alien technology makes you sick.
Yeah. If you want to describe this in a scientific way, there were many people that would say what happened to him that day in the forest was a strange episode of actinic disease, which can be triggered by radioactive irradiation.
What about imagining his arm going missing off his body for a second there?
Yeah. I don't know if radioactive would make you do that, but that's the scientific explanation of what happened and why he got sick afterwards.
Okay.
But scientists have been into this forest afterwards, and we'll talk about this more later. And there's not really any signs of radioactive pockets or materials. You know, I don't know what it would be like uranium under. They haven't found any signs of that. So
okay.
I feel like they're just trying to dismiss.
Yeah, of course.
As they always do for paranormal stories.
Yep.
So unfortunately, after the death of Alexandru Sift, most of his archive that he had spent decades working on was lost.
Oh.
But it was carried on by a man named Hoia Baciu in the mid-70s. And we'll talk about Baciu again here in a minute. Interesting that he has the same last name as the forest.
Yeah.
But he would go in and collect about 15,000 extremely interesting photos of strange phenomena in the forest as well. So now I want to get to the most famous incident that occurred, and this was on the morning of August 18th, 1968, and it involves the 45-year-old Emil Barnia and his friend, maybe girlfriend. I've seen it in both ways. Her name is Zamfira Matea.
Okay.
She was 34, and they decided to go for a walk in the Hoia Baciu Forest. Emil was working as a military technician. Along with them, there were two other people. But then in the light of what happens, those two people have wished to remain anonymous and there's no record of who they were.
Interesting. Okay.
The weather was great. So the four of them decided to stay in the clearing and have a picnic.
In the middle?
Yeah, because it's really pretty. Like if you're in the clearing, you're surrounded by the forest. It's very quiet. They thought it was a charming little place to pop a picnic basket open, I guess.
Okay.
They didn't really know when they went in there all of the mystery surrounding the Hoia forest.
Okay.
There were no signs of anything unusual. They were just hanging out. It was completely silent, and it was around 1:20 in the afternoon. One of the people in the group began pointing upward and saying, "Do you guys see what I see?" And they all looked up and noticed something very unusual in the sky. It was a round vehicle with metallic appearance that was reflecting the sun's rays. It hovered slowly over the Hoia Baciu Forest and was completely silent.
Ooh.
The men hurried to their backpacks to take out their camera to try and get a shot of it because the flying saucer, or whatever you want to call it, was not really moving. He was able to get 2 pictures.
Okay.
He noted that the object changed its brightness and then all of a sudden accelerated fast and flew upwards. One of the images that he took has never been shown publicly because it contains the other couple that was with them that wanted to remain anonymous.
They're like, you're not including us in this kooky stuff for the rest of your life.
But apparently that picture, right, they're like, I don't want to be associated. And apparently that image shows the small object vanishing into the clouds. The UFO sat above them for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, because they were in its parking spot.
They're like, can you move, please? They're like honking their horn. Hey, this is where we hang out and steal sheep.
Or maybe if anybody ventures into that spot, a ship will come back to see what it is. And if it's not what they want, then they leave.
They come down, they're like, ooh, something. Maybe it's like their animal trap.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if we don't want you, I guess we'll let you leave.
They showed up and they're like, oh, these people don't look like they would be tasty.
We were hoping for, I don't know, an alligator this time.
Now, Emil and his girlfriend and the other couple that shall not be named were not people who are known to be interested in UFOs or anything like that. So this was not something that had been known about the forest until this happened.
Okay.
He did release the one photo that did not include the couple, and it was published in local papers within a month of them seeing this. People became very skeptical, as they always do with UFOs. Many were saying it was probably just a couple of weather balloons shot in odd circumstances or odd lighting. The director of the observatory in Cluj-Napoca stated that Emil and his friends probably were just delusional.
Yep, all of them.
Or on drugs or something like that. And they just interpreted the emergence of a weather balloon as a flying saucer. People accused them of being illiterate or drunkards and that they just faked the whole thing. So people were not kind.
Which seems silly because if the other couple doesn't want to be a part of it all.
This is probably why.
Yeah.
Emil had no reason to make this story up. He had nothing to gain from it. In fact, he had a lot to lose. Sadly, I mentioned he was a military technician. Because of these pictures that he released and them going into the paper, he actually lost his job for reporting this because they saw him as a kook, which is really sad.
Yep.
The communist government at the time considered belief in the paranormal to be a sign of insanity and a threat to the state. That kind of tells you everything you need to know. Like they probably knew this kind of stuff was going on and they didn't want it getting out.
Then you can't believe in anything religion tells you.
Well, that's different, Jessica.
No, it's not.
That's divine and used to control people. So now there were investigators that looked into the idea that it could have been weather balloons or blimps or anything else that might have been in the sky in that area on that specific day. And there was nothing that could be found to explain the photos. They also took the photo negatives to examine them to see if Emil had altered it in some way, and there was no evidence ever found that he had tampered with them. So it seems pretty legit.
We're just never going to believe anything until it's down here in our faces.
Even then, we're going to be like, it's a robot.
I mean, at some point in the future, we're going to have like alien neighbors.
Right.
And we're going to sit down and have a glass of wine one day, and we're going to be like, there was a time when we didn't believe you existed forever. Like there was so much evidence. Mm-hmm. But we just didn't believe it.
There was a show about that called Alien Nation when I was also from the 90s. It probably was super inappropriate, but I watched it with my parents.
It's probably super inappropriate.
It was very similar to True Blood, where it was like the aliens fighting for rights to be part of society. And I do remember one of the most memorable things from the show was that alien race, the men were the ones that got pregnant and carried the babies.
Oh, that sounds so familiar though.
So poor Emil was just seen as crazy and lost his job, and nothing else is really said about him. I hope he was okay, but probably not.
It's just a picture. Move on.
But this picture went nationwide, and it really is what started drawing people to the Hoia Baciu Forest. A lot of ufologists began showing up wanting to catch a glimpse of a flying saucer themselves.
Well, then they should pay him for tourist.
They should have. He should have gotten a commission. The last time a UFO was reportedly seen and filmed over Baciu Forest was in 2002 by two Cluj-Napoca citizens. They were on the top floor of a building on the edge of the Monastir district where you can see the forest. And they caught on film for 27 seconds a bright object that was shaped like a cigar and that moved for a distance of about 50 meters in that short amount of time. The UFO in the sky moved up and down until it went into a mass of clouds and disappeared.
That would be kind of a sight to have that forest as your view from your window.
It would be beautiful, and you could just watch it and see if you see anything crazy going on.
Leave a camera right there.
Yeah, like one of those time lapse.
Yeah.
Who knows what you'll catch, or a Ring doorbell even.
Seriously.
So that's what we know from the UFO side of what is happening in this area. And now I want to talk about ghosts and missing people. So aside from the shepherd after whom the forest is named, there have been numerous instances of people just going missing.
Because they go into the clearing and then they get picked up.
Maybe. Many locals attest to reports that upon entering the forest, people lose track of time. They'll go missing for a number of hours and they'll return with no recollection of what happened while they were gone, which kind of goes with what you just said.
Yeah.
One of the most intriguing stories associated with the forest involves the alleged case of a young girl who vanished within the forest only to reappear years later.
Ooh, years.
This one is a hard one. I looked at I don't know how many different articles to get the story, and they all had different details. But here's the gist of it. Many people think this is made up and it's part of the lore. There's not, of course, any specific reports or even the name of this girl, but supposedly it happened in the late 20th century. And it was a 5-year-old girl who wandered into the forest with her parents during a family picnic. At some point, she strayed from her parents' sight and she vanished without a trace. They couldn't find her. There were extensive searches by local authorities and volunteers, and there was no sign of her found, and she was presumed lost or abducted. Turn around 5 years later, and she just reappeared in the same area of the forest from which she had vanished. Astonishingly, she was found wearing the same clothes, which were remarkably well preserved and showed no signs of aging or having lived in the wilderness for an extended period of time.
Was she still 5?
That's the one I can't
Okay.
find the answers to. I saw one where they said she showed up in the same clothes, but they were ill-fitting because she was no longer 5.
I was picturing a funny picture.
And then others I saw was that she looked exactly the same and had not aged a day.
Yeah.
Upon her return, she was unable to provide any detailed account of where she had been or what had happened to her during the missing years. She had no memory of time passing, and she was confused by the attention she was getting. So for her, she went into the forest and just came back out, and it was the same day.
Yikes.
Which also reminds me of a movie from the 1990s called The Flight of the Navigator.
I don't know that one.
I'm just bringing up all the old shit. It was a kid who went missing and showed back up 5 years later looking the same, and he had been on an alien ship and had learned how to fly it. And then the aliens come back because he's needed for some galaxy war. But yeah, he comes back. He looks exactly the same. And then they like take him off to the government offices and are doing all kinds of experiments and shit. So Flight of the Navigator, which is probably another good one for your daughter to watch.
Okay.
And I don't remember anything bad in it. You guys are just getting all kinds of recommendations from us today.
It's a haunted, spooky, supernatural alien forest. It can be more of a discussion.
So this story of a little girl disappearing and coming back is, of course, met with skepticism. There is no verifiable evidence to support the account, and there's no public records. So some just say it's an urban legend.
Because that would be absolute proof, especially if she was the same age.
Yeah.
And you can't have absolute proof. They will not allow it.
Never. Believers in the paranormal cite this story as evidence of time slips or dimensional portals within the forest.
Yeah,
suggesting that the girl inadvertently crossed into another dimension and then came back.
Yeah.
So you take the UFOs out of it, and this is another phenomenon that could be going on there.
Right. I started watching this show. Here's another example. It's on Prime, and it's called Outer Range.
Okay.
Have you heard of that? It's kind of like this. What
Portals?
we're talking. Time stuff. Yeah. It's
I
very
like
interesting. It's modern, and it's cowboys and stuff. So it's really interesting. My dad turned me on to it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
So the story of the time traveling girl of Hoia Baciu Forest is a compelling story, but has a lot of controversy around it, as everything with paranormal does.
Right.
So something else that visitors to Hoia Baciu Forest mentioned is an unnatural silence when you step into the deeper part of the forest. They said you do not hear any rustling of the trees. There are no birds. There are no scurrying of small animals running around. It's just utter silence.
Yeah. Like the Aokigahara forest.
Same way.
Same.
And this could also be because it is very dense foliage that it just muffles it. But it is very eerie to think about when you're in a dark forest. And they said it's not very light in there. It can be almost dark at all times, and there's no noise.
I think any forest is going to be weird if you don't have wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
Especially birds.
Yeah.
Birds know shit.
That's why they're out of there. They're like, I'm not hanging out in that part of the forest. People cite how creepy the misshapen trees look, and they also report feeling that they were being watched by numerous invisible eyes. And this isn't just a few people. There have been hundreds and hundreds of people who have gone in there, and they've taken pictures. They've said that they've seen misty silhouettes and faces coming out of the trees. There are pictures out there, and of course everyone says they're made up and fake, like everyone says about everything.
Are you allowed to camp at this forest?
I believe you can, actually. I'll talk about that at the end. It is a recreational area of Romania. It's like one of their national parks.
Okay.
So you can if you want. I don't know if I would. So I want to go back to Adrian, who I mentioned earlier as the biologist who took over after Alexandru passed away. He wrote a book in 1995, and in that book, he identified a particular area in the forest, which he called Point 3. And he said this specific area seems to be the center of activity for paranormal phenomena that was reported by hundreds and hundreds of people.
Point 3, as in there's 2 more points?
I don't know why he called it Point 3, but he said it's something that fluctuates fluctuates. So there will be a period of time where it's very active and many people will report things. And then there will be several years where people will go into that same area and nothing will happen. One of the beliefs of who may haunt the forest, if you want to believe that there are ghosts looking at you, is that there was a group of peasants who were murdered there a long time ago. This goes back to the archaeological dig that I mentioned from 6500 BC. They know that there was a settlement there, and they believe there may have been some kind of like rival tribes and some kind of battle that occurred here, and that many peasants died in the forest, and that's who haunts it today.
A lot of people died in this area. It could be them.
Yeah.
Vlad's tortured souls.
And if you're wanting to take somebody out and murder them,
yeah,
where are you going to take them? To the dense forest
yeah,
right behind the
exactly.
city, similar to Hoia Forest.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those places.
Somewhere people go to disappear.
And it's been around, we know, since 6500 BC. So imagine how many people.
Old forest.
How many souls could be trapped in there from whatever scary things befell them. So something else reported is that people will hear the sounds of deer or even horse hooves, even though there is nothing around to be seen. Some see orbs floating near the trees, or they will take photos, and when they look at the photos later, there will be faces or orbs that were not seen in person but are shown in the photos. Most frightening is that some people are just out there and they see faces right in front of them just pop up.
What are you doing here?
They say these faces have green glowing eyes. I don't want to see that. There is a legend about a woman in white, because is there ever a haunting without a woman in white?
Nope. Never.
Wouldn't it be a spooky story without one? So as this story goes, a bride-to-be and her fiance were enjoying an afternoon stroll.
Well, at least she was actually in a white dress when she died.
Yes, I think so. It doesn't say for sure. Anyways, they were out for a stroll, and the legend is for some reason she just up and turned around and set off in the other direction, not telling her husband why, and she completely vanished into the forest, never to be seen again. But people have reported seeing a ghostly apparition of a woman in white and believe she's there to haunt. So did something like draw her into the woods, similar to Augihara? Mm-hmm. Was there a voice that drew her away from her husband?
Or Dracula. He wanted his bride. She was already dressed.
Yeah, he's like, you're beautiful. I must have you. It is said that she only reveals herself to women and children.
Interesting, but not in a mean way.
No.
Good.
But she has been seen by many, many people throughout the forest. There's another tale out there of 60 visitors who were, I guess, part of a cult, and they were caught trying to open a portal to another dimension. So yeah, that happened. I guess there's really nothing you can do if you come in and people are just sitting there chanting. You're just like, this is weird, but
waving their hands in the air. Can't arrest them. How dare you?
I wonder if they opened the portal.
There's intergalactic policemen yet.
No. People also report seeing strange lights in the forest and hearing laughter of female voices, or this one's really creepy, screams of young girls. When I hear screams of young girls, I think those are like women who are alive being like assaulted in the forest.
You can't
just count that off and say it's a ghost. That was probably actually somebody being murdered. It's a really big forest. It's very dense and dark. Like that's
scary.
Serial killers go.
Yeah.
That's where Mikhail Popkov took all of his victims, were into the deep forest near Siberia.
Right. Yeah.
So that one really bothers me.
Which is frustrating because if you think about it, even if someone tries to report something,
what are they going to do? Yeah.
I heard screaming in the forest. What are they going to do? Nothing.
Where?
I don't know. And it's haunted.
Yeah.
They won't believe you, but they'll use that as an excuse.
We're going to have to look into serial killers in the Romania area.
Yeah.
That's probably where their hunting grounds are. One of the most reported things that happens up until this day is people just going into the forest, thinking they're going to go for a hike, and immediately having to leave because of feelings of nausea, unexplained fatigue, feeling like they're about to pass out. And some of them even leave with strange rashes or skin burns. That one's odd. I don't know how to explain that.
Only certain people are allowed in the forest.
Maybe. There are tour guides that lead visitors into the forest, and some of them will stay overnight with you. So that answers your question earlier. Mm-hmm. Many of those tour guides quit their jobs because they don't want to continue to stay overnight in the Hoia Baciu Forest. They report hearing very strange things in the middle of the night, many times saying that they heard thumping on their tents. And it would stop whenever they would unzip and look outside their tents. That would scare the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
There was nothing there, but you hear like like, oh, no, thank you.
That'd be scary.
There was a group of 5 hikers from Cluj-Napoca that entered the forest on August 18th of 1999. They were wanting to hike into the infamous circular clearing. They entered the forest in the late afternoon, but as twilight descended upon the forest, they reported an abrupt drop in temperature as soon as they entered the clearing, making them put on extra layers of clothing despite it being a warm summer evening before they entered the clearing. Their compasses that they had with them began to spin erratically, and the battery levels on their phones drained instantly.
Now that's scary. Just turn the phone off. You don't have to drain it.
Right? They said there were sounds of heavy footsteps circling them with no visible source.
Ooh.
Additionally, they heard whispers and faint laughter throughout the trees.
The trees are alive.
This is creepy.
The trees get up and move and walk around.
Several of them reported seeing shadows and figures moving just beyond the edge of their flashlight beams. They said the figures appeared to be human-like, but they moved with unnatural speed and agility. Several group members felt sudden dizziness, and one member began to have unexplained scratches on their arm.
Was it a man?
I don't know. It doesn't say. The group decided to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
They were hiking at this point in the moonlight, and their one flashlight, whose batteries had not died. As soon as they got out of the forest, all of their symptoms, their physical symptoms, stopped, and their electronic devices and their compasses seemed to return to normal operation.
They got their power back?
Yeah.
I mean, the battery life?
I guess it was draining. Maybe it didn't like die all the way, but it was just boom, 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 going really fast.
I'm asking. So did it go down to like 5% and now it's back up to 100?
I don't know.
No?
It doesn't really explain that.
Okay.
They kind of make it sound like that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't make sense at all. The experience left the group deeply shaken, as to be expected. The incident was reported to a local paranormal investigation team who conducted a follow-up expedition, but were unable to replicate what was experienced by the group. The event remains one of many unexplained encounters in the Hoia Baciu Forest. So what is happening there? You know, I've got all of these stories, but what's the explanation? Is it haunted? Is it UFOs? Is it another dimension?
I don't know. Maybe it's just so old. It's all of it.
Could be. There seems to be 2 camps of people. Some who believe it's paranormal hauntings, something like that, or the other side that believes it's some sort of portal or dimension similar to the explanations you would see for the Bermuda Triangle.
Okay.
Some suggest that the forest sits on a spot of Earth where the energy is particularly strong or unique, possibly due to geomagnetic forces, making it a hot spot for supernatural occurrences.
Yeah, which makes sense. There's just different places around the world
that are like that.
Yeah.
When I was researching this, there was a long article, I didn't include it in here, about comparing this to the Bermuda Triangle and the same phenomena that happened there. And they believed, you know, there's an electromagnetic thing that might be associated with that as well. So maybe there are just these like gateways throughout the world. Yep. Maybe they do lead to interdimensional travel. Yep. Maybe it's where the spirits come in and out of. Yep. We don't know.
Even if it's an alien thing, maybe that's
how they travel.
To. Yeah.
We don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know in this world. And this is one of those that we can't really explain. Right. And so it's really easy for people to say it's a hoax or write it off because they don't want to believe that other things are going on.
Which doesn't make sense to me. Why would you want to believe in less?
Yes. I don't know. I want to believe in more. Other spots on the earth that are noted other than the forest and Bermuda Triangle is the Glowful Breeze Mojave Desert, La Spezia in Italy, Hessdalen Valley in Norway, Belo Horizonte in Brazil, and Mount Kailasa in Tibet. So you can believe what you want to believe if you want to think that it's just haunted by all of these souls, or perhaps it is a dimensional portal and you can join a cult that will go out there and speak rituals and maybe you'll open that dimensional portal. I don't know.
You just go sit in the clearing and you'll find out which experience you will have. You might have any of them.
It's true. And I looked on a lot of Reddits and I saw some people who had visited and they were like, it's just a forest. Nothing happens. But then there were other people who were like, my mom grew up in the area and there's a reason the locals don't go there. And I don't know. It's what you want to believe. You don't know what you're going to experience. And if you believe in what the Adrian professor mentioned about was it 0.3? I think he called it.
Yeah.
He said that it ebbs and flows. So you could show up next week and it's just not a time that anything has come through the portal recently and it's quiet.
Right.
And then you show up 2 weeks later and they're having a party. So
A whole party.
So scientific investigations have led nowhere. They've tried over and over and over. Researchers have explored various explanations, including psychological effects and environmental factors. If you want to try and explain it with scientific electromagnetic fields, you could, but that hasn't been discovered by any of the biologists that have gone in there. And I would think at this point we would have the technology to figure it out.
I don't know. It's a technology we don't know.
Maybe. Others have speculated that there's something emitting like a higher concentration of radioactive substances that would explain why some of the people feel the symptoms that they do and could put them into some kind of delirium where they think they're seeing things.
Yeah.
Other scientists want to describe it as a phenomenon psychologically where you go into a creepy forest and you're expecting something creepy to happen, so you make it happen in your brain.
That's depending on it happening to every single person, though, that experiences
I don't believe that with a group.
No. Not a group, and not again and again and again and again. No.
Another thought that I saw while researching was something similar to what we saw with the Kamar Daban.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Which is that it could have been a high frequency sound. I think that was one of the theories there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not quite as strong.
But it's always going.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think Diet Love Pass, they think that
was also a thing. I think we still haven't covered it yet, so I won't talk about it too much.
Right. I don't know. None of these like really, to me, describe it. You can either write it off and say this is all just made up hocus pocus to get people to come to this forest, or there's something paranormal going on. I tend to like side with the alternate reality dimensions. I don't know why. Maybe because it's different.
I think so too. Like that felt more of a pull for me listening to you talk about it. And with that, then we would have extraterrestrials as well, because they would use
those portals to move.
Similar things.
Yeah. So outside of the notoriety of it being haunted and all of that, Hoia Baciu Forest is a beautiful natural area. It has rich biodiversity and it is very peaceful because it's super quiet, as we mentioned before.
Right.
Many people go in there to run, to hike. You can even rent bikes in nearby Cluj-Napoca. They have plenty of biking and hiking paths.
Oh, okay.
So you can explore
nice.
it. When I was looking at this, it's a very large forest. So I think there's certain parts that are probably more just normal, everyday forest. And then you get closer to the clearing or you go into the deeper, denser parts. That's where you're going to maybe see more of that phenomenon.
Right.
If you're going late at night.
Yeah.
But also your mind can play tricks on you when you're in a dark forest at night and you know it's reportedly haunted. So I can get that too. If you do want to visit Hoia Baciu Forest, they do offer the guided tours. They have both daytime and nighttime overnights if you want to go. These tour guides will provide you with all the insights into its histories, its legends, and reported paranormal hotspots. It is not recommended to venture into the forest alone, as it can be very disorienting and easy to get lost. So one of their number one safety tips is always travel in a group. I think that's with any forest.
Right.
Or the mountains of Colorado. Don't go in by yourself. You might get eaten by a bear.
I wonder if anybody uses the string there.
I didn't see any of that. So Aokigahara must be a little bit more dense.
Right.
I think I saw something that like rated the forest and Aokigahara was like number 1 and Hoia Baciu was like number 2 as far as creepiness level, even though it was said it was the creepiest by whoever made that up, probably whoever wrote that article that day. They do recommend that you stay on marked trails. Most of the people who experience a lot of the tales that we hear are those who venture off on their own.
Of course.
Those are also people who are seeking that kind of experience many times. There have been multiple shows, YouTubers, paranormal investigators that have gone into the Hoia Baciu Forest. I'm not mentioning any of those there, but if you want to see more about it, you can watch some live videos. Josh Gates went there with one of his shows. I think he has a few now. Destination Unknown, maybe.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Don't come for me. I can't remember.
Don't come for me either.
I didn't write it down, but he went in there and did a whole episode on this. I saw quite a bit about his episode being really good. At the end of the day, it is a very captivating destination.
Yep.
Not a lot is known. You might have an experience. You might just have a nice day in the woods. Could be either.
Right.
But if you are out there and you're seeking a brush with the paranormal, I would say Hoia Baciu would be a great place to visit. And it's right next door to all the vampire stuff. So
lots of interesting stuff there for sure.
What was happening in Transylvania? It's one of the oldest settlements in Europe. So there's a lot there.
I think it's a lot of fucked up shit that ends up creating these types of places. Think about that.
True. It's like trauma and
murder and just control and, I don't know, slaves and
evil just builds up.
Evil and famine and just everything you can think of in one area over thousands of years.
It happened there for sure.
Something's in the water.
Something. So whether you're a skeptic or a believer, I think it's worth checking out if you happen to find yourself in Romania. I want to go to Eastern Europe one day. I mean, I want to go everywhere, but
me too.
Eastern Europe looks pretty fascinating and beautiful. Croatia, Romania, Slovenia. I had a friend who went there recently and she was posting all these pictures. Her and her boyfriend did a whole Eastern Europe tour. Prague, Czech Republic, all of it. And I was like, I feel like that's not an area that most of us like think about very often for, you know, travel bucket list. But I was pretty impressed with some of the pictures I saw. So that's my story of Hoia Baciu.
I like these destination episodes.
Me too.
They're fun.
Just keep adding to the list. It's interesting to hear what's out there.
Yeah.
Especially when it's outside of the United States where we live. We know a lot of the ones here. So I had not heard of this forest before, but when I was looking for some creepy locales to research, this one came up repeatedly and I thought it was worth doing a deep dive on.
Yeah.
I was hoping to find more. I know this is one of our shorter episodes.
That's okay.
It's a lot of folklore and a lot of experiences. So
I know some of you might appreciate a shorter one every now and then, especially when we're popping out 3-hour ones. It's probably hard to get through. We understand, but we don't ever want to leave out any details.
I found everything I could and I'll be making up for it because I have a 2-parter coming up next.
She does. She hasn't done one in a while, so
I haven't. And it's going to be a good one.
Yep.
Anyways, thank you guys for joining for this episode.
Kendra.
And Jessica needs to go lay down now. Her headache.
I am bad. It did not go away, so I don't get to go have fun tonight.
You get to lay in bed with an ice pack. It's okay. We're going to make up for it.
Yes. 2 days.
Yes.
In
Sunday.
2 days. Yeah.
Hopefully I don't have a headache by then.
Seriously.
You never know in our lives what could come up.
So messed up. Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you for listening. Please send in your lab reports or mini episode or big episode suggestions to lucidlabpodcast@gmail.com.
And you can find us on all of the social medias. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all at Lucid Lab Podcast, one word. And we'll be back next Tuesday with a tale from Jessica.
I'm not going to let you know what it is yet.
It'll be good.
I don't want to spoil it. You actually might know what I'm talking about if I say anything about it right now.
And in the meantime,
stay so very lucid.
We'll see you guys soon.
Roma spoon.
We're trying our Romanian.
See ya.
We probably said it wrong.
Oh well.
Bye.
Goodbye.